Hello and welcome back to another one. And recently Benzino did an interview where he spoke about a lot of things including the Eminem situation.
In retrospect, would you had a chance to do it all over? Would you do the Eminem thing the same way?
And today we'll be breaking it down. I'll split it into several points and elaborate on what I think about this whole thing and why I think Benzino should just let it go since it's been more than enough time for him to move on. But I get it, this is just like suffering from a lifelong injury for him since every day he is reminded of what went down in the Eminem situation and he's got like a daily dose of L's he has to swallow every day because of that. Some may even take things further and say he's got several doses a day he needs to swallow and digest. So let's get to it. The first point I want to talk about from this interview.
Oh, wait. Before you lost it, you guys lost the source. Is there any truth to everybody saying that you were giving yourselves the mics and you was giving yourself positive reviews?
No. The only time I gave myself the mics was the Eminem situation. And I felt like at that point, because it was me against the staff, me against everybody. I felt like at that point I was like everybody. I was in a dark place where I felt like I'm standing up for something that's right. I know deep down what I'm standing for. It's just not rapping. But I just felt like nobody backed me. I felt like the industry, you know what I'm saying? And I had to learn this the hard way. Like, you can't look at the industry to be righteous. You know what I'm saying? Righteous. You know, you can't look at them to be revolution, and it's about making money.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? At that point, maybe because I was already making money, I just took it for granted because I didn't have to answer to nobody. Like, I was at the top of the food chain.
So Eminem was right on the money. He was giving himself the mics, and this would also mean underrating Eminem albums purposely. And for those who don't know, that was how the source rated hip-hop albums. 5 mics represented the usual 5 stars that most people are used to from other magazines, and as you heard, he still doesn't claim responsibility for his actions. He's blaming others, claiming that he felt everyone was against him, including the staff, and that was why he gave himself the mics. Now, how does it happen that everyone goes against you, including the staff? It is simple. If you're an awful boss who ignores the goals of your organization for personal gain, you should expect it that everyone will turn against you. Reports suggest that Benzino was running the magazine like a street racketeer, so there's that. Also notice how he talks about standing for something positive, and we'll get to that later, and more on the Eminem question was asked just moments later.
In retrospect, would you had a chance to do it all over? Would you do the Eminem thing the same way?
Yeah, it's hard to say that. It's hard to go back and say would you do anything's over because it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like that, at that time, I felt deep about what I was standing for. Right. You know what I'm saying? My thing was hip hop, and I always said this, and people have heard it before. Hip hop is the only thing that made white people come to the culture, buy into the culture, spend money, and also interact with the culture through hip hop. Right. Nothing else has happened. There's nothing else that brought white people to black people than that. Okay, so I felt like once they get a white rapper and make him white where that white people want to buy him, then they that balance. Because now white people would just with him because of his skin color. Before they had to come with us because that's the music. Like, I didn't feel that way about the Beastie Boys. I didn't feel that way about Third Base.
Now notice how standing for something positive from his perspective is about being a gatekeeper. Benzino wanted to be the guy who says who's allowed and who's not allowed into hip-hop culture, and he talks about skin color like that's the deciding factor of what people will consider good music from a hip-hop artist. And looking at this now, you know that deep down Benzino knows that Eminem was so good, and this quality in Eminem felt like a threat since he wanted to see himself as a gatekeeper in hip-hop music. He probably looked at Eminem and felt This guy is about to body the people that I view as top rappers and felt threatened. Of course, he didn't feel that way about the Beastie Boys, but Eminem was different because he knows that as much as he disagrees, Eminem was the one that looked to be a part of the culture that was the threat. Benzino discussed more on this, and you'd see that this wasn't even about Eminem personally, but his personal opinion on who should and who shouldn't be allowed into the quote culture later on.
With Eminem, I just felt like, okay, hip hop is big now, it's pop now. Now we need and white people are buying into it. Excuse me, now we need a white person to represent the white people. And that's just what happened. What I said happened. Period. Like anybody that even tries to fool himself, like he came in and there's a whole demographic of white people. Those are the guys who are voting for Donald Trump.
Right.
You know, no matter what, it says policies. You know, all right, and it's just it's a color thing, it's a tribe thing.
Now, what he's saying can apply to people of any color, and the same can be said about blacks too. There are those that won't listen to Eminem's music because of his color, period. This is something that no one can control. It's just the way the world works. Complaining about it, trying to be a revolutionist and all that can't change this. So why try to make Eminem pay the price for something no one can control? Something that applies to every color of people around the world. This is hypocrisy at its finest, as he makes it seem like blacks don't do the same, and this is something that he's doing while complaining about others doing it. Before we continue, remember to hit the like button if you're enjoying this so far. The likes are free, and if you're new to the channel, also hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. So let's continue.
So I just felt like Eminem, and Eminem didn't even have to be the one.
Right, I was gonna say, because it's not necessarily his fault, from what you're saying.
Right, but when you look at the Eminem situation, hip hop is more than just rap. It's a culture.
Right.
It's our fucking life. It just isn't rap.
Right.
This isn't rap. You know what I'm saying? It's our life. So, you know, to him, I'm sure it's rap. You know what I'm saying? But unless you grew up in the culture, you could never know.
So you don't feel Eminem is of the culture himself?
He raps of the culture of no. Eminem's not in the culture that I'm from. That's not a bad thing. I'm not mad at that. A lot of people ain't.
Okay.
But he's not. We're not from the same cultures. He grew up one way, I grew up a whole different way. That's where you come, you know what I'm saying? That's what I mean, culture.
Now, the whole culture thing is quite interesting because even within people that share a particular color, the way of life is not the same across a particular country, and this applies to every country big enough in the world. Even in the US, someone who grew up in New York and someone from New Orleans, for instance, even if they are the same color, they didn't grow up the same way. In the UK, for instance, someone who grew up in London and someone who grew up in Aberdeen didn't grow up the same way, even if they are the same color. So maybe Benzino is advocating that if you didn't grow up in the hood in New York, then you're not of the culture, since the culture is not the same in every part of the US, even for black people. Or maybe it's just flat out racist. Even the way people talk is different, the food is different, the way of life is different, and the hood is not the same everywhere, even for blacks in the US. So what are your thoughts on this? Tell us below, like and subscribe if you haven't, and see you on the next one.
So you don't feel Eminem is of the culture himself?
He raps of the culture of no, Eminem's not in the culture that I'm from. That's where you go, you know what I'm saying? That's what I mean, culture.